What's the best open source model for coding right now? GLM 4.7, MiniMax M2.1, DeepSeek 3.2, or Kimi K2 Thinking? Today, we're going to find out in our little test. But we're not doing like a simple one prompt landing page this time. We're actually building a real business tool, a quote generator for solar panel installations that I actually built for a client. You can upload a floor plan, you can add customer details, and the AI then calculates the available space, the number of panels that should be used, the labor cost, and so on, and creates a complete quote that can be sent to the customer or still can be edited. A quick background, I build AI automations for small and medium-sized companies, and I actually built this exact tool, and today we are going to do it from scratch. I also launched my own AI app, which is an AI tour guide that creates a tour for you anywhere in the world for any topic, and then gives you full GPS around the tour and also leads you through the tour like a real guide that you can talk to. So when I test these models, this is actually stuff I'm using myself. So we use the same requirements for all of them and see what they got. We will jump into the first test, which is GLM, and I will explain the tool for you, everything that needs to be done. They all got the same instructions, but there were multiple prompt cycles. So, of course, after the first one, it changes between the models. But I will show you on the first one how this should work, and then you can understand how they prepared it, how they generated this tool. First of all, we start with GLM. And what you can do here is you can input a floor plan, or you can even do the elevation one from the side here. And then you can also put in some information about the building and the customer and what should be done. I will do just as an example here. We will, of course, use the same example for all of them. And then you can press generate. And the tool is then going to create, or it's going to send to the API for the AI. We're using OpenRouter in this case, giving all of the information. It needs to adjust the image so the AI can also read it, and then sends all information to the AI. And the AI needs then to calculate all of the stuff and so on. Just for the presentation, I will use Gemini 3 Flash for this, but this model is not good enough if you want to have this in a production environment. This is just for demonstration purposes. In the tool, we have on the left side a chat interface. So here's some information that the AI gives to us, but then we can also chat with the AI. So when it created the full quote, we can tell it to change things. I'm not going to show this right now because this is something I have not tested on all of the generations. And we will test at the end and see where it will work and where it won't, because I'm very interested in this one. But as you can see, just from the generation, it fills in all the different spots here and generates a real quote. Again, this is just demonstration purposes. For this, you really need to use a good model. You need to use Gemini 3 Pro, or you need to use at least Sonnet 4.5. So this is not an easy task for all the standard AIs. So keep this in mind. But as you can see, it generates a full quote. We can also say in this example, when we want to look what it generated, this is not enough explanation and so on. But of course, with every customer they have different requirements, how this should look like. And then you can add additional fields where they should add additional information. Here we have, for example, included services, excluded services, terms and conditions, stuff like this. This is all the stuff that GLM decided on right now. It has a few things that it had to implement, but anything else was decided by the model. And then you can also download it as a PDF or generate a new quote, whatever you want. And one thing that is very important, you can still edit everything. So you can still edit everything in the HTML directly before you download it, so that the employee, when they check the quote, that they can also check that everything is all right. They can make changes and so on. Of course, if you want to make bigger changes, like changing the price, you should use the chat field for this. But in the generation, what GLM did There was only one problem. I tell you right now, it did an amazing job. It created it in one shot. But I had problems. I had to talk to it multiple times because on the first try, the API was not working. Now, the problem why it was not working was very special, and I want to warn you about this because this happens a lot. I told it to use this model here, and I copied in which model it should use. But if the AI doesn't know the model, it will sometimes still not do what you tell it to. Even if you tell it to use exactly this, it might still input a different AI LLM name. For me, for example, it put in Gemini 2. So this was not even served on OpenRouter anymore. So of course it was not working. And this was the main issue I had, where everything else was working already. So I needed to be very firm and tell it to actually use the one that I told it to. And then still later on, when I changed it again, it still made problems and used the wrong model. So please keep this in mind to always check if they're using the right model. Otherwise, you might waste a lot of time like I do sometimes. But this is overall, GLM did an amazing job, super fast. It generated in less than 3 minutes. It was absolutely amazing. And yeah, aside from this issue that costed me quite some time, it was working right away. So this was a really good job. The second one is MiniMax. Again, this is the new version, the M2.1. So it just came out of, I think, 2-3 days ago. And this is the generation that we have here. We, of course, will test the exact same and see what it got. So we generate. And first of all, what I can tell you is it took quite some time for MiniMax to create this. So I was waiting quite a lot, and then it was not working on the first try. So we had to do some reiterations. First, it was mostly using dummy data. So this was not really working. So I had to do a few tries, but I mean, at the end, it worked out. So as you can see here, looks quite different from what we have on the GLM model, but also the information are here. It's filling it in the right fields, which is really good. For example, here we see there is stuff missing. So this was not properly done. Either it did not do the right system prompt for Gemini 3 Flash so that it would actually give it the right JSON from this. Or maybe it's just left out or the field is wrong. Anyways, this is something you would need to iterate on. And this is already after a few prompts. So this took quite some time to get working. Nonetheless, it is working. But still, there's still work to be done to make it perfect. So keep this in mind. For me, the main issue was that it took quite some time and that I didn't really fully trust it, what it was generating. And because it does some, I don't know, I can't really explain it, but it does some weird stuff where you're like, okay, I would be very surprised if this works right now. And I'm eager to see at the end if the chat is working, because here it was really trying to just put in dummy data instead of the AI actually generating the data and putting it into the fields. But let's say it's working. It needs some tweaking to put in all the fields, but at least it's working. Then we have number 3 is DeepSeek. And I think you will see it when we go over to the other one. DeepSeek 3.2 is important, and we are not using Speziale. We are using the normal one from the API of DeepSeek. So keep this in mind. And I have to say, from the overall result, DeepSeek was the one that was really thinking about how to get the best output. I was using RuCode for this, and it was really thinking like, what are actual features that I need that will make this really good. For example, like toggle for editing was actually something that the others didn't have, but there you can just put it in the right way so you can decide yourself if this is a good or a bad thing. I really like this feature, where you had the export PDF, the export HTML, and then you can also reset the entire thing, of course. And here we have the looks, I must say, are lacking. So this is more of a front end or design thing, I would say. So this was really lacking. And it's also much shorter. If you compare it to the other two, we had a lot more sections with important information for the customer. So of course, like if you take this it doesn't have enough information for a customer. But if you specify it, then of course it will implement it. Though from a technical perspective, I felt like this was the most thought through example from all of them. So this is really important to know. And then of course, if you're using API cost, the DeepSeek model is unbeatable in price. It's absolutely insane how cheap this model is for what it can do. If you're really on a tight budget and you're just paying by credits, then DeepSeek is the way to go. I think it has great coding capabilities. It is very slow, I have to say. Again, I was using direct API from DeepSeek, so if you use something from Open Router, it could be faster. But the result, I was really positively surprised, I would say. I really like the result. Again, we are not pushing those to the end, right? We are putting them all into prototype territory. But what it was thinking about and what it was implementing was really, really good. And I really liked it. And then for the last one was Kimi K2. And this was a very special flower, I have to say. First of all, before I tell you how it ended, I want to say that Kimi K2 is my favorite model out of all the LLMs. If you are just using it in an LLM style, you want to talk to it, you want to, I don't know, ask it for advice and so on, I will always recommend you use Kimi K2. It's just the best. It's better than even ChatGPT and so on. But when it comes to coding, unfortunately, it's not my first choice. And here, I have to say, I had to abort the try. I mean, you can see in the console that definitely something is working, and it's also getting out the information to the API and getting information and so on, but it didn't work. I was trying and trying. The cost was already, I think, was 70 something cents, and it always had problems with tool calling in RuCode. Even though on the official website of Kimi K2, they show RuCode as one of the possible examples. And it couldn't edit files. Sometimes it could, sometimes it didn't. Even if you told it the file that was actually there in the folder, it still made errors, and it was always blaming someone else. It was blaming the API is not sending information back, instead of that Kimi was actually doing a mistake here and what it coded. So I have to tell you that this was a fail. Kimi K2 was a complete fail in this test. Again, Kimi K2 is not bad in coding. That's very important to know. But again, it's also not my first choice. And this test here just failed. So what I want to do is let's test the chat functionality at the end and see unit price for a solar panel is actually $200. So let's see what happens here. I would think that none of them will work or will do what is needed to be done. And let's see if it can change it or not. So from what I see here, I would already think that the communication is not working properly. So the continuation of the conversation is not how it's supposed to be. This is not sending the information, the proper information to the AI. Or let's see, does it say here unit price? 2,450. Those are the others. No, it's not. At the end of the day, it's pretty obvious that it didn't work. What it should be doing is sending it back to the AI in the full conversation, telling it the unit price needs to change to 200. The AI needs to change this and then send in just the new information. Like every block is separated from the others, so you don't always update all of the file, which is like, if you would do it like super simple, this would the way to go, because you need to regenerate everything all the time. But this is not what you want in a production environment. So you only change the things that need to be changed. And here it would be this field that need to be changed. We would need the unit price to change here. We would need the total to change. And we'd also need to, the overall total would also need to change. And then the payment schedule, where I would think that Gemini 3 Flash is not smart enough to do this here in this situation. But okay, so this is not working for GLM. Again, I have not tested those before with the continuation of the, interesting. I know this behavior from building the tool. This is something where the continuation of the conversation is working, but it's only sending back the information that have been changed and is not sending in the other information from the same block. So what is happening, the rest of the block is just disappearing because this is the only information that's coming back, and the tool is not taking this into consideration, where the easy fix would actually be to tell the AI how to handle the changes properly. Of course, this is not to be expected to work on the first try. And since I didn't improve on it, this is totally fine if the different AIs fail here. Though we can tell the continuation of the conversation and also the updating in general is working here. So this is really good from MiniMax side, even though, well, of course, we know the other fields are not working. And then let's see how DeepSeek is doing. Wow, crazy. It updated the information. Yes, but it's not $200 now. That's interesting. So, I mean, you will see it better in the video. I can't just do a replay now. It changed the entire field, but the unit price is wrong. Again, this is something where the issue is Gemini 3 Flash and not, most likely not what DeepSeek was building here. So keep this in mind. Though we know that the conversation is working quite well in DeepSeek, so it took this into full consideration when building it, and because it was also specified. So keep this in mind. And yeah, so this is also a big plus for DeepSeek, I would say. So we can say from all the tools, GLM was not updating it or was not continuing the conversation properly. So this was a mistake by GLM. But we can see that MiniMax and also DeepSeek were doing it. So yeah, overall, I would say, so from the full experience, my personal choice would be GLM because it was coding the fastest by far. It was creating all of the stuff properly, how it should be done. We see that the conversation continuation didn't work so far, but I think this will be an easy fix. MiniMax, I was not really into it because it was taking so long and I had to do a lot of reprompting and talking to it. DeepSeek, for my feeling, did an amazing job on what it created. The quote itself is not visually pleasing, but the rest is okay and look good looking for me. How it was doing it technically was, I think, even my favorite. Just technically was on a level with GLM at the same, but how it was even thinking further than GLM, this was a big plus for me. So DeepSeek would also be a good choice here. I would still not choose the DeepSeek one because just of the speed. So the time it took with DeepSeek was maybe 5 times what it was doing with GLM. So that's why I would prefer GLM in this case. But nonetheless, DeepSeek's still an amazing option. Kimi K2, unfortunately for our example, not working. So I cannot recommend it for our test. Again, I think it's the best LLM you can use for general stuff, but for coding, not so much. At the end, I mean, I will still say at the moment right now, the best deal you can get is with the GLM quarterly plans. If you even do some coding and you want to have fixed price, $8 for 3 months of the light version for GLM 4.7, absolute no-brainer. I can highly recommend it. As you can see, for me, I have the max plan for the quarterly myself. I also have a link in the description where you get 10% additionally. And this is one that I can really recommend. You have to keep in mind the others cost more and they didn't perform as well. But DeepSeek was also a very good choice for our test. Of course, we will do way more tests. One test is not saying that one is the best for everything. So keep this in mind. But for our one, this time I would choose GLM and second DeepSeek. So let me know any other tests that you want to see, especially which models in which conditions would you prefer, rather have 2 models and we test them on multiple things. Just let me know what you think and we will see each other in the next video. Thanks for watching.